Greetings and salutations, Redeemers, and welcome to today's episode of Recipe Redemption. I'm Mike Uyak. I think I've told this story before, but it bears repeating and it relates to today's video in a way. When I was in the Navy, and just kind of at the beginnings of my foodie explorations, I learned about the Imperial Herbal Restaurant in Singapore. Um, and it's a place where you can actually go. There is a doctor on site. You can go tell him your complaints, what some of the things that you're experiencing, and he would write a prescription, um, or rather, just a list of recommended dishes off of the restaurant's menu that you could order that would make you feel better, at least for that day. And because it's Chinese traditional herbal medicine, there's going to be a lot of ingredients there that are, yeah, a little bit different. Not the sort of stuff that you find at a typical restaurant, pretty much anywhere. So I thought, okay, I want to go and eat some crazy food, so I'm going to go. But I didn't want to break the bank, and because I wanted to try a lot of stuff, I didn't want to be that guy who's sitting by a table, sitting at a table all by himself with like 12 full-size dishes and no possible way to eat it all. I didn't want that. So I talked 8 or 9 of my shipmates into going with me for that purpose, so that we could order a bunch of stuff and not break the bank for each of us individually. So we got there, and I told them, okay, the only sort of requirement that I have, I'm footing the bill. I dragged you all here, so I'm going to pay. The only thing that I ask is that you order something that you've never had before, something really exotic out there, just, crazy food. That's all I ask. And they said, okay, we get it. We understand the mission. And I didn't think about the fact that some of these guys were not as adventurous as I was, not as I don't want to sound pompous by saying experienced or worldly or anything like that, but hadn't tried a whole lot of stuff. A number of them were, good Midwestern farm boys, and so they had meat and potatoes, um, you know, every single day. So come time going around the table and ordering, and sweet and sour shrimp. Uh, I think there was a chicken chow mein. um, I know there was a duck dish. I think it was just roasted duck, and I was like, "Come on, man, something exotic." And they pointed out this is exotic. One guy had never had shrimp before in his life. Another guy had never had duck. And the one guy who ordered the chow mein had never had Chinese food. Period. So I had to adjust my expectations. We still got some weird stuff. We got like crocodile soup and scorpions on shrimp toast and all sorts of stuff, and some really questionable wine with a penis in it. So, yeah, we had some weird stuff. But in and among that were things that I didn't think were all that weird, but were to them. Fast forward to about a week and a half ago. And I met a guy who had never heard of lasagna. Yeah, an American born. His family has been here for generations. He should have heard of lasagna. Um, it's served in public school lunchrooms and restaurants all over, and he'd never heard of it, and in fact had almost never had like Italian food at all. He'd had spaghetti with meatballs, but that's pretty much it. That was the extent of Italian food for him. So he had never heard of lasagna, and it struck me that what is commonplace to one person is totally exotic to another, completely unknown. And that's a lot of what this channel is about. A lot of these vintage recipes, good or bad, a lot of them are bad by our standard, by our tastes, but good or bad, they're unfamiliar. You've maybe never eaten jellied eels or asparagus stuffed in a French roll or ham and bananas with hollandaise sauce on them. At some point, somebody made these things, and these were normal. Who knows? Um, and so it occurs to me that there are focusing on the really horrible ones is really amusing, but also the ones that may not be so bad, but are just unfamiliar to 21st century tastes. Um, that may be a loss. That may be something that we're losing because we're not maintaining some of these sort of traditional recipes. And we can see that. So there are dishes that, restaurant dishes that were considered very fancy and the pinnacle of cuisine that you just don't see anymore. Lobster thermidor, even shrimp cocktail. You don't see it that often. Pressed duck. Um, you're hard pressed, pardon the pun, to find those in a restaurant anymore. Um, and so today I thought I would try one of those sort of classic dishes that probably isn't that bad, but has kind of gotten forgotten, and that is turkey tetrazzini. Some of you may not have heard of that before. Some of us may be shuddering a little bit, and I'll explain why. So, the origins of turkey tetrazzini are a little murky. Most food historians agree that although the surname Tetrazzini is certainly Italian, the dish turkey tetrazzini is solidly Italian American. Most also agree it was created in honor of the Italian opera singer Luisa Tetrazzini sometime in the beginning of the 20th century. Um, some say it was created in San Francisco in 1905 when she performed at the Palace Hotel's Palm Court and the subsequent banquet held in her honor. Um, or in New York City in 1908 at either the New York City Knickerbocker restaurant by Chef Pavani or Lorber's, which sits across the street from the Metropolitan Opera House. There is no known documentation that Luisa Tetrazzini ever actually tried the dish or was even present at a location where the dish was served. There's no record of that. Some even mention that culinary titan Georges Auguste Escoffier invented the dish, but he never mentioned it in any of his cookbooks. Though he did have a history of naming dishes after people, like peach melba and melba toast, named after another opera singer, Nellie Melba. Tetrazzini is a dish designed as a way to use up leftover turkey or chicken. You can do that. So its heyday was really mid-century, with the movement toward convenience cooking and efficient use of ingredients to stretch the grocery budget. Finding a way to use leftovers and pantry items, absolute gold. This often meant that a lot of canned goods made their way into the dish, particularly canned cream soups, which have become the sort of ad hoc cream sauce slash gravy for several generations now. Even some of the cookbooks that include this technique in their pages acknowledge it isn't as good as making the cream sauce yourself, but it does save time. I have, personally, I have a bit of a checkered history with turkey tetrazzini. They used to serve it in my grade school and middle school cafeterias from time to time. And it was always this gray, somewhat menacing glop with disturbingly large pieces of mostly uncooked celery sticking out of it. I don't know if the staff at those schools just weren't very good cooks, if the recipe they were using was bad, or if the pressure of cooking a batch big enough for 300 hungry kids somehow affected the execution of an otherwise passable recipe. But when that was your choice for the day, you choked down the overcooked pasta, dishwater colored sauce, and chewy chunks of what advertised itself as turkey but could just as easily have been, Gum. I'm going to try and create the classic turkey tetrazzini recipe today because I don't know that I've ever actually eaten the real thing as it was meant to be served. And we'll see how it goes. I start off by setting a pot of water to boil for the pasta and heating my oven to 400 Fahrenheit. I'm sautéing a medium onion. I'm not looking for full caramelization, but a little color is good. Next, I cook down about a half pound of chopped mushrooms. I'd say sliced, but the package I bought had enormous pieces, so I just chopped them down to something a little closer to bite size. I'm using a non-stick pan, so this isn't going to develop much fond, the brown stuff stuck to the bottom of the pan when cooking, but it could create a little, and I absolutely don't want to lose that flavor. So I'm deglazing the pan with about a quarter cup of sherry. Scrape up all those good bits and set that aside. Now I turn my attention to the sauce. Pretty standard bechamel. 3 tablespoons of butter heated until it stops foaming. Add about the same amount of flour and stir regularly to coat the flour in the butter and cook until the desired level of toastiness. We're not looking to add too many darker flavors to this, so a blonde to light brown roux is fine. To this, I add 2 cups of warm chicken stock and 2 cups of whole milk. Heat and stir continuously until it comes to a simmer and thickens slightly. And I say slightly, this is a small amount of roux to a lot of liquid, so it's going to be pretty runny, and that's okay. I'll explain in a minute. Oh, and now's the time to add a teaspoon of thyme, 1.5 teaspoons of onion powder, and about a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. You can add some garlic powder to this too, or you could have added garlic to the onions when you were sautéing. I didn't have either today, so I didn't add them. When the mix is hot, add in a cup of grated Parmesan cheese and stir until melted, and keep warm. Now is the time to throw in a pound of dry linguine pasta to your now liberally salted boiling water and cook to what I would call a super al dente. This is going to be mixed into the sauce and baked for another 20 minutes, so it's actually desirable to undercook the pasta at this stage. You want it completely flexible but still a little crunchy in the middle if you chew on one. This is also why it's okay the sauce was really soupy. The pasta is going to absorb a lot of that moisture while baking, thickening the sauce and finishing cooking at the same time, all the while absorbing flavor as well. I'm going to do the assembly in a mixing bowl because my saucier isn't big enough to fit all the rest of the ingredients. When the pasta is just about ready, add the mushrooms and onions to the sauce, or the sauce to the mushrooms and onions like I'm doing. To this, stir in 3 cups of cooked, diced turkey meat. And just to keep this dish from turning into a wholesale celebration of beige, I'm adding a cup of green peas. The noodles go in now. Make sure that they're pretty well drained, but you don't have to worry about getting them completely drained out. A little extra water is not going to hurt here. Like I said, the sauce is really soupy. Stir that together and put into, I have an oblong Pyrex baking dish here, and make sure it's all spread out evenly. Oh, and I forgot to add a sprinkle of nutmeg to the bechamel earlier, so I'm adding it now. Probably a total of a quarter teaspoon, I'm guessing. Spread about a cup of breadcrumbs, seasoned with a quarter teaspoon of kosher salt, and stirred into a tablespoon of melted butter. Then put this in the oven to bake for 20 to 25 minutes or until thickened and the topping toasted to your level of desirability. If it starts to get too brown too quickly, you can cover it with foil. After baking, allow it to sit for about 10 minutes to continue thickening up, and so it won't be nuclear hot when you try to take a bite. And here we have it. Classic turkey tetrazzini a la Mike. The pasta has soaked up almost all of the liquid, so it wasn't runny at all. In fact, there was it's coated with the sauce. So any liquid that they didn't absorb is now coating all of the pasta pretty evenly. The topping got reasonably toasted. I didn't want to take it too dark, so It is a fairly solid pasta dish now without a whole lot of, gloopy sauce. Mm, that is delicious. The nutmeg is coming through because it wasn't really uh, sort of stirred through the sauce. So that's kind of like almost the first thing that hits you is the nutmeg. It's really well seasoned.
Atop this,
No,
spread about a cup of breadcrumbs seasoned with a
there
quarter
were a
teaspoon of
few
kosher salt
of the
and
noodles
stirred into
that
a
kind of stuck
tablespoon
up
of melted butter.
out of the sauce,
Then put this in the oven to bake for
so
20
they
to
kind of
25
dried out
minutes or until
and
thickened and the
are
topping
still
toasted
still
to
a
your
little
level of
chewy. I would
desirability.
adapt
If
this,
it starts to
but
get
maybe
too
bake a
brown
bit
too
more of
quickly,
the
you
sauce to
can
make sure
cover
that
it with
all of the
foil.
noodles
After
are
baking,
fully
allow it to
submerged
sit for about 10
before it
minutes
goes
to
in the
continue
oven.
thickening up, and so it won't be
But
nuclear
I
hot
don't
when you
mind.
try to take a bite.
I think that small little tweak, I will still eat the rest of this. Um, the turkey ends up being a little bit overcooked because you already have fully cooked turkey and you're throwing it in here and simmering it for another 20 minutes. So um, you can expect the turkey to be a little bit chewy, but not too bad. The flavor is fantastic. Mm, that is a very solid dish, and I think a great way to use leftover turkey or chicken, like I said. This is super tasty, um, not too difficult, relatively quick. Um, it took me about an hour to prep everything and cook it up. So this even qualifies as kind of a midweek kind of recipe. You could do this if you had like roast chicken or roast turkey for Sunday dinner. Monday night, you could turn around and turn some of that leftover turkey into turkey tetrazzini. Solid dish. I think it does not deserve to be forgotten, and I recommend that you actually make this. This is super tasty. I'm going to finish this dish. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time on Recipe Redemption. Bye now.